Guys, welcome to episode 15 of the Hushlife podcast. Today we are joined by an exceptionally talented friend and guest of ours who's made a living in the hunting industry as a photographer, videographer, outdoor adventurist, shed hunter, you name it. The ever so talented Mr. Stephen Drake. Also, as a quick note, make sure you get in for the Ultimate New Mexico Elk Hunt giveaway. It is double entries week, which means every dollar spent on our website, gethushin.com, equals 2 automatic entries. And to win, we will be picking a winner and taking somebody on an elk hunt later this year in October 2021. And the promotion will end on May 23rd, midnight Eastern. So double entries week. Make sure you get entered. It is going to be an incredible experience hunt and a prize package valued at over $16,000. Logie Bear, on to the episode.
All right, and we're live. Bring you guys to the intro music.
Oh my goodness,
it's so good.
Wow,
so
not fans.
This is what our new investment got us.
Yeah,
a little jingle.
Where's the joke one, Logan?
Well, just in case a joke arises. Super classic.
I'm glad those are just short little audio bleeps, not like a 30-second intro.
Yeah, where it's just like
nobody's
on
got time
and
for
on
that.
and on. Well, if you guys didn't know, we are joined by Mr. Stephen Drake.
Oh my god! Please stop.
The audience claps.
We're sitting here in a beautiful lodge. Is that the proper word for it? Lodge.
I think so.
We're surrounded by some incredible taxidermy, beautiful scenery. Just started raining very hard, but we are at the R&K Ranch. And for those of you that have followed along our channel anytime in the last year, you might know a couple things about R&K. Number one, we took Casey's son Gage out on a hunt here last year, killed his very first bull. And through that process, Matt Lee, the one and the only, our latest creative addition, guided out here on R&K for a number of years, and he was also joined us on Gager's hunt, and subsequently joined the Hush team here shortly. So we're out here doing a fun project that we can't necessarily disclose yet, but that is what has brought our latest guest to us. So if you are not familiar with Mr. Drake, please tell the people a little bit more about your background, because I think it's a fascinating background. You are somebody we have known of and known informally to a degree for a number of years. So walk us through a little bit of history of Mr. Stephen Drake.
Sure. So I'm 32 years old, been a photographer by trade for about 10 years now, and went out on my own about 6 years ago to be a freelance photographer and shoot for a bunch of different brands, spend a ton of time, especially up in Canada, overseas a lot, but just shooting these crazy wild hunting adventures with, some of the coolest people you could ever spend time in the woods with. So that's the very short of it. But I'm based in Bozeman, Montana, and grew up hunting, just living the outdoor lifestyle, and just happened to, I suppose, get lucky and just pursue my passion, which led to picking up a camera. So my passion was hunting, and I picked up a camera, and I used the camera as an avenue to share some of these cool outdoor experiences I was having, and through that. Got connected to various hunting brands. Instagram was kind of in its infancy when I got going, started posting to Instagram. That has since blown up, and now I travel all over the world and make a living, and my career is being a photographer.
So when you're not on the clock shooting professional photos for various brands and people and what have you, what are some of these other activities that really kind of fuel your passion for the outdoors?
So I grew up skiing and ski racing, and that was like, that was my biggest passion of all. I mean, I was skiing over 100 days a year for multiple years, and I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, I basically just quit cold turkey, just like quit skiing. And I still love it, and I still love to do it. I mean, I didn't go once this year. Last year I went once. But I think as you get older, sometimes your passions just change a little bit. It was a really interesting thing for me because I was like, my life was skiing. And one year, it's like I bought a season pass and I went up to Bridger Bowl, based out of Bozeman, and I was just like, what's the point? And I wasn't getting much out of it like I did. I was like, what am I working towards? Like, what's the end goal here? And yeah, somehow it all just transitioned to hunting, and hunting is this kind of eternal challenge that you will never ever master. And so that led me down this crazy route of going to wild places with the camera, and when I'm not doing that specifically, I spend a ton of time shed hunting. Try to get 30 days in each spring, and there's just nothing better than, I love doing it by myself. I've got a lot of friends that I shed hunt with as well, but I love doing it by myself and just getting away from everything. You maybe you hike 15, 20 miles a day, and you just work yourself. And from a creative aspect as well, working as a photographer and owning my own business, like when you're out in the woods by yourself, that's where my best ideas come from. And your mind just goes totally free. And so yeah, that's my passion when I'm not doing photography things. So
shed hunting. You guys paying attention? You guys. No, it's really cool to have Steven out here because we never met him in person, and like Brian said, we had known of him through Instagram and also YouTube, which is pretty cool because Steven, in my own opinion, is next level when it comes to video quality. Like you said, this is a career job or a career path, and his full-time job is to create content not only for himself but other people too. And so for anybody who doesn't know who he is, he's got, you can find him on his Instagram platform and YouTube. And to me, the YouTube platform is the most interesting because, a lot of YouTube creators start out with not a lot of knowledge on the camera side of things, and a lot of people always assume that YouTube content was just kind of low quality, And I always pictured Steven as like the high-end stuff within the hunting industry, especially his shed hunting stuff, his daily vlog stuff. So I always thought it was interesting to see your content on YouTube because I'm like, all right, here's a guy who clearly is educated and very skilled at photography and videography, who is also doing vlog style videos. And there's a guy on YouTube that I followed years ago that actually Casey introduced me to. His name is actually Casey Neistat. He's a filmmaker that makes just unreal edits, and he's really good with the camera. And if I understand correctly, he kind of came from the Hollywood side of things, maybe making movies or.
Yeah, so he did a lot of like Sundance work and stuff like that, and then the art really is integrating that like the cine of that with the vlog, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beautiful balance, is taking a vlog, which can be anything like a selfie video from your cell phone, but making it super quality, so you can't really distinguish between the two.
Exactly. And he ran with that platform, and Casey grew a giant audience on YouTube. So when I started watching your stuff, Steven, I was like, man, this is the Casey Neistat of the hunting world. And to me, that's a huge compliment because I think he's really good, and I think your stuff is right there. So Steven's YouTube channel, if you guys ever get a chance, go check out his YouTube channel, and you'll see what I'm saying. He combines that connection through the vlog with like a very like professional cinematography style, video all in one. They're really fun to watch. He's got a lot of content on there that's really informative, and so I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because I don't know you at all, but I've always wanted to like ask you a lot of these questions, like in your opinion, coming from that professional side of things, what is it like to also do like these vlogs? Like, what does that mean to you, and why do you enjoy doing that when you're you're so skilled?
Yeah, great question. And a lot of what I've done, so when we started the podcast, I said I was just a photographer. That's kind of how I got into it. But I've always had a love for video, and I would always shoot video, and I've actually shot quite a few video projects as well. And kind of the reason I started vlogging, and I mean, gosh, this is 4 or 5 years ago at this point, but well, one, I saw what you guys were doing, and I was like, holy cow, like YouTube is a platform clearly for people to, make videos about what they're doing in the world and make a career out of that potentially. And so I was like, well, that's really interesting. But for me, I mean, I was getting so many questions just through Instagram. People were wondering, like, how do I get into this? Like, show me more what you do, et cetera. And so much of the work I was doing was branded work. And so you'd be shooting for these high-end brands, and like very, very little of that content would actually get out. And I was having all these really cool experiences. And I mean, gosh, I think I spent 5 years in a row going up to Arctic Red River Outfitters up in the Northwest Territories, just photographing and filming hunts each summer for a lot of time. I mean, I was basically like, I was almost working as a full-time guide. Like that's how much time I was spending up at that outfit. And I was like, wow, like I want to share with people what I'm doing, because a lot of people have questions about it. I'll post little snippets of it. And so kind of the reason I started a vlog channel was to, one, just give people an inside look into what I was doing. And then two, which is very, very similar to what you guys say, it's like be inspirational in hopes that you're going to get more people out there. And I've said this in a lot of my vlogs, and I'm like, and kind of every time I make a vlog, I'm like, okay, I have to ask myself, like, does this vlog, does it inspire? B, does it entertain? That's where the kind of cinematic part comes into it. And then like 3, does it educate? And if it doesn't do one of those, I'm just kind of like, is this worth posting? Because my goal with it is, it's a bit of a catch-22, right? Because like you want to grow your YouTube channel, you want to get more people on there, but it's like I want to inspire people and educate them and show them how to get out into the woods and have more experiences of their own, so that they're not glued to their phone. So it's like, hey, here's a really cool tip that's going to help you, go out and do things in the mountains, and like here's kind of a behind the scenes look into what I do and how I do it. So that's kind of the root of it. I was also in a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a creative rut, but I was looking for, I guess, like another creative outlet. Yeah. And the vlog style and just like the video style of things, and then having full control over the content instead of, I mean, gosh, when you shoot a video project for brands, for the most part, it's, gosh, you might spend 3 months just pitching the project, and then when you actually start editing, it's going to take 10 days, and then there's all this back and forth, and it's like, man, I just want to like pump this content out and show people and be a little bit consistent about it. So that was kind of the root of why I started vlogging.
It's super interesting too, because your vlog is filled with so many great things, and I think a large amount of it is derived from these truly wild adventures that you've been able to participate in. I would say arguably as much as more than anybody, like, aside from an actual guide on, and I'm talking like, sheep, moose, mountain goat, caribou, some truly epic, hunts of a lifetime. I think you said you've been on 20 sheep hunts. Yep. 20 is insane. Countless others. And I think your photography work has always reflected, the adventure side of it. But now your vlog, you are able to share so many of the intricacies that go into the planning, the logistics, the gear, the conditions, the experiences that you've had in these truly wild places that most people aren't able to get to in their lifetime. And each vlog that you do share, to the education component, aside from like the entertainment value, it's loaded with great tips, tricks, tactics, just from, the past decade that you've had out in the field. And I'd say on average, I think you were telling me you're spending like hundreds of days in the field a year, not only professionally, but also like in your free time, it's back out in the field to either chase elk or look for sheds, or just, enjoy like a backcountry hike or something. So that's what I've always enjoyed most about like the YouTube content side of it. And then to Eric's point, that intersection of just next level quality. We are very basic quality level, I'd say. With Logan's edition, we've improved that drastically. But, what Steven's doing is really neat to see. And in a space that historically hasn't seen that, which is another thing I love about it, is a whole new demographic of people are kind of seeing that intersection between the hunting and gear, the camera, photography, cinematic stuff, all blended into a vlog, I think is really unique and cool.
If only I could pump it out at the rate that you guys push content out. That's the biggest barrier. It's like I'm fortunate that I'm very busy on the branded side of things, where I'm either shooting photos or video projects for them. And then at the same time, like, oh, there's this vlog thing and this YouTube channel. It's like growing. It's fun. I really love it, enjoy it, and it's kind of right now I'm in a bit of a balance, I suppose, of like, which one do I, or which one do I push forward on the most? So
How did you break through into the industry to like, and you talk about shooting for some of these major brands, obviously a very competitive field. What do you think were some of the key factors in actually breaking in and getting your foot in the door?
Part of it, and I mean, you'll hear this from probably anybody that's had any success, it just takes a lot of time. I mean, I've been shooting photos professionally for over 10 years now, and part of it, sorry, I just had part of it's just, well, I guess quick little backstory. I grew up hunting, based in Montana. Have a dad that I've spent a bunch of time hunting with, and when I moved to college, I just wasn't able to hunt with him as much, just the physical distance. And so that's really when I picked up a camera, and my whole point was to be able to like photograph and film some of these experiences that I was having in the elk woods, and to be able to share it with him. And then like Facebook was just getting going, Instagram was just getting going, so I was using like those as the platform to then like share with my dad. And then I happened to live in Bozeman, Montana. Sitka Gear just moved to Bozeman. Mystery Ranch Backpacks was based in Bozeman. And there's just like, it's kind of this central, this hub of like outdoor and hunting gear companies. And my first class in my first day of college, I met a guy that eventually, through him, I got a job at Mystery Ranch, and then ended up working for him for about 5 years. And it's just, it's networking, it's being in the right place at the right time, and just, whatever, working hard. So, but yeah, I was just following, just shooting photos and documenting things that I've loved to do personally, and that, and a lot of it too in the hunting space. I mean, if you went back 15 years ago in the hunting space, every single photo you ever see in the marketing side of things, for the most part, was like a grip and grin. And a lot of it, like, my gosh, like, so when I first got introduced to Sitka Gear, they actually sent me and 3 other guys down to SHOT Show, which is like the biggest, what's called, SHOT stands for Shooting, Hunting, Outdoor Trade Association, I think.
Yep.
So we went down to that trade show, and this was, I think, in 2011. And the whole purpose of going down to that show, they sent 3 people, including myself. We were all like young photographers, and they're like, we just want you to go to the show and walk around and look at all the photos and like how poorly hunting is being represented. Because, and so we go to the show, and it's like right when you walk in, there's like this 30-foot wide banner. It's just this guy with this really weird look on his face, and he's like stalking through the trees, and you're just like, huh? And then, you're walking around, there's all this like high fence stuff, and just, it just wasn't, it was a terrible representation of what hunting actually meant to me and to the other photographers that were there, and to pretty much everybody at Sitka. And I would say 99% of the hunting population, just, for 99%, it's all about the experience. And, big animals will come, but I mean, one thing I always reference back to is it was actually that year, it was 2011, I spent 45 days elk hunting before I finally killed an elk. And the kill was, as a break it down by a fraction, was 1/45 of the entire experience of my elk season. And so it's like, okay, but with photography, it seems like, or with hunting photography, it seems like all you see is the trophy shot. It's like, man, like, where's all the rest of it? Because it's like,
the story.
Yeah, where's the story that goes into this? And from a non-hunter's view, if all they see is someone smiling, they think they're just smiling at the death of that animal. They don't understand all that goes into that. So go back to SHOT Show. Every photo we saw up there was either a grip and grin, a trophy shot of some kind. There was a bunch of high fence stuff, and it was just like, man, this is really too bad, because I think at the time they had 80,000 people going to that show, and it's just like, that's a huge representation. And I mean, I fully believe that hunting could get voted out of the United States so easily, and it's like, we need to do something to like better represent this space. And Sitka took a very strong stance on that. After I went to SHOT Show, they basically seeded me gear and said, hey, you've got a platform to share your content on. And that was how that was my introduction really to it all. So
from that experience, it's interesting because I think you've seen the evolution of, in many ways, how hunting has been portrayed, and photographers like yourself and many others and several brands, I think, started to change the narrative of what that looked like, and through the lens of freelance photographers like yourself, in capturing more of the experience side of things comparatively just to the grip and grin.
Yeah.
And in marketing these days, if you were to go to a trade show or you look at, any digital marketing from websites to social pages, etc., I think you see a much different picture today than you did 10 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. It's changed drastically. And it wasn't just Sitka, but Sitka was one of those early companies. It's like, hey, we need to make a change here. And it's an amazing progression to see, and I'm thankful for it. And I think the future of hunting it'll continue because, things are changing.
So as you've transitioned from essentially like a photographer working for a lot of brands until now like an entrepreneur yourself, kind of going out on your own, what was that transition like, and how has it been going the last several years as you've kind of ventured out?
You learn a lot about yourself. When I first got into it, and when I worked in Bozeman and for this other agency, my job was purely that of photographer and videographer. Like, I didn't deal with any of the business side of things. I didn't talk to clients. A little bit, but like 95% of the time I was out there shooting photos and video and going on these wild trips. And as soon as I went out on my own, fortunately I had kind of built a brand, if you may, have built up my name enough so that when I went out on my own, like people knew who I was, so I didn't really have to pitch myself that hard. I'm a pretty introverted human as is, so I can't imagine going out on my own or just starting into it, be like, I want to be a hunting photographer. but either way, nowadays you spend so much time pitching projects. I feel like I probably split my time 50-50, if not 40-60, being like 40% of the time I'm actually out creating, and 60% of the time I'm trying to manage some of the business and managerial side of things. So that's been a pretty interesting transition. But I would say if anybody's ever on the fence of doing it, absolutely do it. Because even if you okay, I've been a freelancer now for about 6 years, and I could quit doing this. I could go work for a brand. I would be so much more hireable because now I've done all these things, and I basically manage. It's a one-man team managing my whole business. And it's like, if you were ever to, like I said, take a chance, go be a freelancer, try it for a couple years, and then if you're like, it's not for me, if you went back into a more, say, a corporate position or just working for a company, you're going to be so much more hireable. And I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself in that process. So
For sure. What would you say has been the biggest challenge going out on your own so far?
Biggest challenge? Honestly, this last year it's been COVID, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. So for me, so much of the travel and photography and video that I do, it's a lot of it's overseas, a lot of it's going up to Canada, and right now it's just so hard to go anywhere outside of the U.S., which is cool. It's also kind of created it's created opportunities for me as well. It's like, oh well, shoot, I had like a dozen photo assignments get canceled this year. Damn. And yeah, it's like crap. And so it's like, okay, what do I do? Because no one can just sit there and be stagnant. Like, you probably go insane. And so I spent a bunch of time hunting. I did a bunch of stuff just in my home state of Montana. And I really picked up, I really started doing a lot more of the vlog game. And now that thing's just like totally growing legs, or growing wings actually. But now as things are kind of coming back to normal, it's like, well, travel's starting to open up again. Borders starting to open up. So it's like, prioritizing, I guess, is a big challenge moving forward, because if you're a one-man show, you can only do so much, and then it brings up issues of like, okay, well, how can I grow this? Do I want to grow this? Do I want to have a big team? Like, what does that look like? And that's just it's a great, amazing problem to have, but it's kind of a scary proposition at the same time. So
I kind of got a question for you. So you do both, obviously. The vlogging side of things, where you truly are the creative. No one's saying like, this is our vision or this is our pitch. if you had to truly choose between the two, taking rad pictures for Instagram and stuff and never doing another shoot for somebody but doing vlogging,
Yeah.
or continuing to grow your business and be hired out and express your creativity that way, which one would you prefer, do you think?
Ooh.
Yeah, money's not an issue.
Yeah.
It's just where do you feel more fulfilled and using your creative talents and stuff.
Probably the vlog world. It's just, for me, it's the best way to get information out there and truly help people and like provide something valuable. Because, I just get a lot out of that. And when I do the brand and stuff, it's super fun, and I work with really cool people, and I really do enjoy that. You have a more personal touch, but I think you're able to reach a much broader audience and have a greater impact with something like YouTube, for sure. So,
I got one more. This
ahead.
one's not as realistic, but you can never take a photo again, just video, or you can never take video again, just photos.
Well, it kind of depends on the situation, but
That's a tough one,
that's
huh?
a tough one. Yeah, I don't know. Probably, I don't know. I guess.
It's hard because the photo aspect, if you could take photos, you'd find very more creative ways to tell a story through photos, knowing that you can't do video.
Right.
And then the video aspect of it, there's something in still imagery that's so powerful.
Yeah.
So it's a toss-up. That's a new question I just thought of. I'm going to keep that one in my back pocket.
That's a tough one, dude. I've been doing photography and video for so long.
You're the perfect guy to ask.
I'd hate to. I don't want to give up.
It's a
either,
mean
right?
question.
So, yeah. Either way, it's a bad answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a thought because, we do YouTube and like you mentioned, it allows you to connect with people and they're able to engage and make comments. On the YouTube side of things, like what are some of the most meaningful comments that you've read on your videos where people are becoming viewers and getting to know you? Like what are some of the most meaningful things that you can just remember?
Yeah.
When it comes to just like comments.
Totally. It's stuff along the lines of like, hey, like, wow, thanks so much for sharing this. Like I use that tip or tactic on my own adventure. I'm like, yes, that is absolutely the reason that I started vlogging and started making these videos. Mm-hmm. So that's, when it just kind of seems like there's like a direct line of feedback. It's not just like, oh, sweet, I got a view. Oh, sweet, I learned how to do this. It's like, oh, now someone actually took this advice and implemented it, in their own way. So.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, like, give some of the listeners maybe an example or two of some of these ridiculous adventures that you've been a part of. It's hard for me to accurately kind of describe it.
Yeah.
But as a follower and a fan of yours for a lot of years, I've seen snippets of many of them, but love to hear like a story or two that really stand out and resonate with you from these crazy adventures you've been a part of.
Totally. So I suppose most photo assignments and projects and just adventures I try to be a part of, it's like there's a recipe for success as far as creating really, really epic imagery, and that's go to really epic places with epic people doing epic, like crazy stuff. And if you have all three of those, like crazy things are going to happen, and if you have know-how with the camera, you're probably going to capture some pretty wild stuff that just like very few people are ever going to experience. And so fortunately I've kind of found that like that's kind of my niche. And I've been on a pile of experiences and adventures doing that type of stuff. So my first big one, I hadn't been on a horse in about 10 years and kind of got just thrown to the wolves a little bit. And it was a great experience, probably one of my favorite. But I helped a team of wranglers trail. What was there? I think there were 17 horses. So we trailed horses 200 miles across the Yukon into the Northwest Territories. It took 14 days. Had 2 horses die. Had one fall off a cliff.
Jeez.
And land, 10 feet from me, right in this big river. And he landed head first. I got totally splashed with water, and that horse is just dead. Crazy story, but that horse's name was also Cookie, so Cookie Crumble. We lost. We lost our Cookie. Lots of inside jokes there, but either way, it's a lot of these adventures and trips I've been on. It's all about pushing yourself way outside your comfort zone. both for me as the photographer, the one documenting it, as well as for everybody on these adventures. And so that was the first one that kind of like I was so far out of my element. But I did that trip, and when I got back home, I was like, holy cow, like I can't believe what we did as a team. I can't believe that I survived that. And like you take, what you learn in those situations, and it's like it just makes everything that much easier in life. It's just all about perspective, right?
For sure.
So that was the first big one that kind of set the stage, I suppose, for what I continue to do. But lately we've been going up with a group of friends up to northern British Columbia in the kind of the dead of winter. There's a general mountain goat hunt in northern British Columbia, right on the coast. That it's only good for British Columbia residents. Well, you go to if you had a guide, but I've got a bunch of British Columbia buddies. Anyway, so we've been going up, and to do this hunt, we basically have to charter a boat, probably about 10 miles, and you cross this big bay, and then there's nowhere to dock the boat, so you have to jump out at high tide, and you jump out in waders, or the way we've done it, 2 guys jump out in waders, and again, it's middle of winter. And there's actually been ice that's been forming on top of the ocean water at times, and so it's kind of sketchy. And you're jumping out in the ocean, and the tides are rising fast, and so 2 guys jump out in waders, haul all the gear, pack people to shore, and then from there we've actually skied up this big basin about 5 miles, and then you look straight up, and there's a bunch of mountain goats, and they're like 4,000 feet higher than you are, and being February when we're doing this, you got these super long nights, like 12-hour nights, and the weather's just awful. It's coastal, so you get these crazy huge snowstorms. But the last big one that we did up there, it took us, I think, almost 3 days just to get up to where the goats were. So one day, basically getting to the bottom of the mountain. Second day, we got halfway up the mountain, and then third day, we made it above the Alpine, and our second night up there, all night we could just hear avalanches just dropping all around us. Fortunately, we were in the timber, so I think we were in a fairly safe place. But just to hear avalanches dropping all night, it's just like oh great, and now we're going up there.
Yeah, right.
You're like, what are we doing? But so anyway, so we get up and had clear weather, fortunately. But every night, I think our lows were -20. Fahrenheit. Highs we had one day it might have got up to 20, but terribly cold, and on a hunt like that, especially when you bring your camera gear. I mean, I probably had an 85-pound pack, and I weigh 130 pounds, and so
it's impressive. Dude.
So the ratio there is a little off, but on that trip specifically, we did kill a goat. Well. So my buddy Connor, he actually drew on a mountain goat on our 8th day of being up there. And we're kind of just surviving at this point, long cold nights, and just pretty miserable. And he draws on a goat, and I'm filming. I'm right over his shoulder, and like, this is epic. This goat pops out, and he's right above this massive valley floor, and the sun's just hitting him, and filming it in slow mo, and it's the wind's kind of hitting this goat, and his hair is kind of blowing in the wind. It was really really cool. And in the corner of my eye, I see him, and he's shooting a thumb release, and he's pressing the trigger, and nothing's happening. He's jerking his trigger like real hard, and then all of a sudden the goat kind of like moves, and then I quit recording, and I look, and he's like breathing on his trigger. His trigger had gotten so cold that his firing mechanism in his trigger actually froze.
Jeez.
So
what a mood kill.
Oh gosh, so I got some really epic photos of that goat and of Connor's reaction right after that. I mean, he was just whatever, it's hunting, right? It's not the end of the world, but he was just like, man, like so much effort went into getting to that one moment, and then to have a mechanical failure like that's just like, I mean, whatever. Now we know, I guess, like, okay, put your release in a little Ziploc until it's time to go, and just so that no moisture gets in there. But and then right after that, we actually spooked that goat and another one to our buddy Dustin Rowe, and he was able to. He basically slid down the mountain. He was rolling snowballs on this goat, and probably dropped 500 vertical feet and slid right into 20 yards of this goat on this. I mean, all the snow up there. I mean, there's probably 8 feet of snow.
Yeah.
Just a huge avalanche terrain. And anyway, he arrows this goat, and he makes a great shot, and the goat runs to this kind of cliff edge, and he shoots it again and makes another great shot. And the goat basically tipped over and died. Problem is, we were on top of about a 3,000 foot. I wouldn't necessarily call it a cliff, but it's like, well, it's multiple cliffs. So that goat falls off and actually slid down this big old face 3,000 feet to the valley floor, and just like instantly out of sight. And we have no idea. We're like, we know we killed the goat, but it's like, wow, what happened?
Dang.
And as a hunter, there's so much that goes into recovering these animals and making great shots and doing what you can to make sure nothing bad happens of that. And so we were pretty bummed. We're like, all right, well, let's start packing out. So it took us a day and a half to drop all the way down the mountain, and we got to the bottom of this massive avalanche slide, and there's this goat laying right in the bottom of it. It broke off one antler or one horn, and but yeah, that was a pretty wild one, and it's one that pushes everybody way outside their comfort zone. And as a photographer and just a human, it's really fun to do that type of stuff, and you learn and take so much away from those experiences. And gosh, when you go have a wild experience like that, you come back to wherever your home state or province is, and you hunt at home, and it's like, I got this. You're like very confident to like go do anything. So that's what I love doing. I love going on those projects just for what I retain coming back from that.
What do you think is more difficult on an adventure like that? The physical component of it, or the mental, emotional component of it?
It's interesting. So initially when I got started, I would say probably the mental, but now, I mean, I'm only 32, but it's like mentally, I know I can probably do about anything. I have the capacity to survive about anything. And because I've been there, I've had a lot of those experiences. Now it's like physically, it's like, I know I can do it, but I know it's going to suck. Like it's going to be painful and whatever. I've got a bad back nowadays, and I've thrown my back out like once a year, and it's just absolutely crippling. So now it's like you're doing all these things to like train and like make sure you don't have these issues when you're out there. So now it's kind of funny as you grow it or get older, that becomes kind of the fear, or at least it has for me. It's like, how do I maintain my physical body to be able to handle this stuff? Because mentally I know I can do it.
Sure.
But if I blow my back out, like I mean, I can't even walk for 3 days when that happens. So
Do you find hunts that you go on that are not on this level of adventure less satisfying, equal, different?
It's just the experience is just a lot different. I've photographed a bunch of waterfowl hunts recently, and it's really fun. It's something that I've never really done before, and just like, it's a new creative outlet to apply some of the things that I've learned or picked up on, where you go shoot these and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Like I get to have a little more control of some of the situations maybe. So I do still gain a lot out of just photographing and filming and just being a part of other hunts. Sometimes it's like, yeah, absolutely, I want the toughest thing ever, but other times it's like, yeah, it's nice to have like an easy hunt. So
yeah, because it seems like historically a lot of times the most challenging hunts that you're a part of in the moment are just terribly horrific. But
yeah,
in reflection, maybe as quick as 24 hours later, you almost hold those to another higher standard in your mental Rolodex of
totally. All these big trips like that Mountain Goat one, I call them type 2 fun. It's real crappy while you're doing it, but as soon as you're done, it's really fun to look back on. You're like, that was epic, but while you're doing it, it sucks. So
how do you stay warm in conditions as that? Because I feel like 95% of people would never even attempt that hunt just based on the pure weather conditions and the terrain alone. How do you even remotely stay comfortable in those type of weather situations?
Well, a whole lot of puffy layers, and there's a few tips and tricks, I suppose, but yeah, a lot of it is mental. A lot of it is mental for sure, and a lot of it is like having good gear and trusting. Like, okay, like when we would climb 4,000 feet to get up, like we were sweating our tails off, and it was also dumping snow at the same time. And so you've got just this thin little base layer, then you've got your rain gear on top, and like every time you stop, like instantly you're cold. But you've got to rely on your quality gear to be like, okay, this my body heat's going to dry my base layer. It's going to push the moisture out. But in that 20 minutes that maybe it takes, like you're really uncomfortable and it sucks. And so like being really dialed with your layering system, I suppose, is pretty important. For some of the temps that we were experiencing, I mean, again, it's a trade-off with weight on those hunts, especially because you've got so much gear and you've only got so much space, and it's like me weighing 130 pounds. It's like I can pack a pretty big load, but it's like at a certain point, it's just, you know, there's trade-offs for sure. But on that hunt, I was wearing double boots, so they've got it's kind of like a ski boot. You've got an inner boot, and then you've got like a harder outer shell. I was the only one on that most recent hunt that didn't get frostbite on my toes. Everybody else, their toes were turning white and they were losing toenails, and I got some epic photos of them putting their boots on every morning. But so that's a tip for sure. And then one thing I learned years ago was that if you have a hard Nalgene bottle, if you at night before you go to bed, if you just boil an extra liter of water and you dump that inside your Nalgene and then throw it in the bottom of your sleeping bag, or just kind of keep it close. I mean, that thing will put out heat. It won't melt your bottle, by the way, but it'll put out heat for 5 hours. And so that was a great tactic. Definitely use that a lot. When I started that tactic, I would actually, you'd have your mountain house or your freeze-dried bag. You'd eat your food, and then we would just dump a boiling water back in them and then like zip it shut. But 50% of the time when you do that, the bag would leak or the thing would open and you would wake up just covered in water and then you're wet inside. It's just like bad news. And then at some point I learned that you can put boiling water in an algae, and I was like, no way. It's just kind of like ding.
Yeah.
So like little tips like that is stuff that I love to share with people, and I try to do as often as I can on my vlog channel. So
yeah, it's things like that make all the difference in the world, and cold weather, trying to sleep in cold weather is probably one of the worst things too.
Yeah.
After you've had a long day, and you were mentioning to us earlier that you kind of referenced it, but the nights are incredibly long. So you're in your tent for such a long period of time before you're able to be up and active again.
Yep.
And if you were, obviously not warm enough to get any kind of rest, that also is going to play a huge factor. So that is a fantastic tip shared, is if you've ever found yourself in a chilly condition, boil some water, throw it in an Nalgene, and voila, you got a hot rock essentially right in your sleeping bag.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind was the hot rock.
Oh yeah, hot rocks were great too. The other thing with that though, you gotta know that if you're using a traditional fuel canister, when it gets cold, they become incredibly inefficient.
Yeah.
And so we packed up a bunch of fuel canisters on that hunt, and this was a great learning lesson from that one. But our fuel canisters probably were 50%, like their capacity got decreased by 50%, and so right off the bat we're like, crap, we don't have as much. We have half as much fuel as we thought we did. And like, it didn't matter if you'd sleep with them or whatever, or put them on a pad when you try to boil water. And so it became we were basically conserving fuel on the mountain, and you had to boil water or had to boil snow to get water. And so nowadays on all these late season, these really cold winter hunts, actually do like a white gas stove.
Yeah. Just much more, because the isobutane fuel is just really doesn't react well to cold conditions.
It basically freezes up, and it doesn't come out of the thing. So it basically becomes depressurized.
Okay.
So that was so we did our best to try to boil water, but sometimes it'd take 20 minutes to get a boil, and it's like, you'd burn all your fuel just doing that.
Yeah, and these guys were way above tree line too, so no firewood, no potential for fires, just complete reliance upon the hot water bottle to keep you kind of moderately warm at night.
Yeah, and being 12 hours of darkness too, you'd be sitting in your tent, and it's like, okay, after 5 hours, your little Nalgene would not be putting out any more heat, and you're just like, gosh, I've got whatever 7 more hours just to sit here until daylight. And like, we'd get out and we would hang out, and then it's like, oh, let's just try to sleep, and you just sit there and shiver. And it was pretty brutal, but
sounds like an awesome time.
Yeah, type 2. Type 3 fun is when you cry. I haven't been on one of those. If you're actually crying, that's type 3 fun. I try to avoid that.
I like that type 2 fun reference. I have to remember that.
So back to type 1 fun. Chasing elk, you've mentioned to us, is possibly the greatest joy that you have in a hunting scenario when you're at least on your own hunting.
For sure. Yeah, after all the travels and stuff I've done, I mean, I love coming back home and chasing elk, especially with a bow during the rut. Yep. Just nothing better than that. So,
what is your preferred tactic of chasing elk?
So I've been archery elk hunting for 17 years now. I've been fortunate enough to arrow or recover, I guess, eight bulls, and in all that, I've learned a lot of things, but from a tactic standpoint, if you're trying to kill the herd bull, if you're trying to get the biggest one, I've just had terrible luck calling. I also hunt by myself almost all the time, and so I've never really had the caller, traditional setup where you have a caller behind the shooter. And so my tactic has been, I just shadow these herds of elk and just make sure the wind's right, and then when they're moving between their feeding and their bedding zones, just try to cut them off. And I've had a lot of success doing that. So it takes time though, and you got to have the time to commit to it. If you've only got 3 or 4 days to hunt, you might have 2 days where the elk aren't talking at all. And if the elk aren't talking, like the area where I hunt, it's pretty thick. Like you just
can't locate them.
You can't locate them. So
I've heard other guys with similar tactics, that really aren't into the calling, and a lot of the folks that I'm thinking of are very successful in killing mature, potentially the herd bull in those situations. Some of them I've even heard talk about like shadowing the herd and kind of waiting until a bull will peel off a cow to try to breed it. So become a little less, vulnerable with all the different eyes of the entire herd and try to just capitalize on that. But in your situation, you're trying to typically intercept. Have you had more success in the interception in morning hours or in the evening hours?
It's kind of 50-50,
is it?
To be honest? Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think it's cut right down the middle. The bull I killed this year was, I'd hunted 17 days, so it was on my 17th day of archery hunting, and I had, whatever, you get to a point in anything where it's, whether you're a skier and it's like, okay, I started off and I jumped off a 3-foot cliff. As you get better and older, it's like, okay, I want to always progress, right? You always want to get better at what you do, and a lot of times in hunting, it's a couple things. It's getting more efficient, being a much better shot, being like the best hunter, shooter that you can, and then it's also, at least in my opinion, like harvesting bigger, more mature animals. That's just kind of a natural progression of. It's just harder. It's just plain and simple. It's harder. There's less of them. There's a lot more eyes. It's just more challenging to do. And so, but as far as morning, evening hours, sorry, I'll back up. The bull I killed this year was on my 17th day, and it was my last day of the season to hunt. I was like, it's time to make something happen. And I had kind of been shadowing this bull for 3 days, and I'd seen him earlier in the season, and he was the biggest one that I had seen in this area. So he was the one I was after. And with like an hour left of daylight, this bull pops out at the head of this big meadow, and it was one of the more insane days of elk hunt I've ever had. I think there was 11 different bulls, and there was 25 cows, so the bull to cow ratio was quite good. But there was this tiny little draw between me and this bull is probably 300 yards out. So I just get in the draw and I just start running, and I ran about 50 yards until I had to belly crawl. But I basically belly crawled / army crawled, and it was hard, and I was going right down this draw that had some water in it, so you're just getting wet, but I was like, it's now or never, like just be aggressive. And I got probably 100 yards from him, and one of his cows saw me, so I was kind of pegged. I was right out in the wide open. And then a satellite bull, like a younger little raghorn, he sees me, and he's like, what is that? And so he starts walking right to me, and he gets probably 20 yards away, and he's gonna come downwind to smell me. So I'm watching this bull, and I'm like, God dang it, gig's up. And then out of nowhere, I hear this bugle, and here comes the herd bull. He's running in to chase off this little satellite bull that's trying to pick me off. And that bull was so fired up. I was like, holy cow, and I ranged him, and it was right at 50. And I ranged him again, 50. I was like, I'm very effective at that range. And so, I just drew back and shot, and fortunately made a perfect shot, and he ran about 80 yards, and I watched him tip over. So, but that one, it's so much of what I do, it's just try to get into the mix and just see what happens. Yeah. Because crazy stuff happens. Half the time I've been in on a herd, and then some random bull comes out of nowhere to come in and challenge, and he might be bigger than the quote herd bull. And I think if you just shadow the herd, like, you're going to learn so much about elk. So, but that's generally my tactic. Yeah. Just kind of shadow the herd and try to get into the mix and see what happens. Oh, the sweet feeling when it all goes right, and particularly when you can watch that bull tip over in your eyesight. I don't know that anything's better than that.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen often, you know, when you arrow an animal, especially a big elk, that you get to see it go down.
Yeah.
How many times have you been able to hit an elk and actually visually watch it go down?
I think twice.
Twice.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty rare. It's a really great feeling. After a while, you have a lot of experiences hunting, and you do everything you can to make a perfect shot. And sometimes you do, and things still don't work out as well as you want. But right after the shot goes, I am like the most nervous, stressed out about during the entire hunting process, because you're like, I really hope my arrow like impacted exactly how it's supposed to. I made a perfect shot, whatever. Oftentimes it doesn't go that way, and it turns into quite a rodeo. But you do everything you can to make it happen right. And so it was a relief after 8 archery bulls, or after 7, to have my 8th one be as perfect as it can be. So actually, I just shot a vlog. I broke it into 3 parts, but it's on like all the lessons I've learned from every bull I've ever shot with my bow. So
That's cool.
and I share everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's a lot of ugly that led up to this point now.
Sure.
So, but I think that's a natural progression of anybody. You start off, you make dumb mistakes when you're young. When I was young, I the first elk I ever killed, so I was 18 years old, and I was whatever. It went through bow hunter safety and had multiple mentors and stuff. But I'm a person that loves to just kind of figure stuff out on my own. I'm just kind of naturally curious and love to tinker. And somewhere in my mind, when I was young, I believed that a larger entry hole, so basically a bigger broadhead, would mean a quicker kill. And I was like, I want a quicker kill, clearly. So I was shooting like a 70-pound bow at the time, and pretty heavy arrow. I just, again, I didn't quite know what I was doing when I was 18, but I had a decent setup to definitely get the job done. But what I failed to do is I failed to put on a proper broadhead. And so what I did, I put on a 3-inch turkey broadhead, 3-inch turkey expandable.
Oh, jeez.
And oh gosh, so long story short, I shoot this bull at 40 yards. It was great arrow placement. This thing runs 80 yards. So I shot him at 40. He runs probably 80 yards, and he stops broadside, and he just tips over. Legs kick, and I'm like, holy cow, I just killed my first elk. It was like unbelievable, and I was like, okay, I just sit here and wait 45 minutes, make sure he expires. And I wait 45 minutes, and I walk up there, and I'm being quiet. I get 10 yards. All of a sudden, this thing jumps up and just runs off. He's got a giant hole on his side, and there's stuff hanging out, and he's bleeding. But and my arrow's sitting there, and my arrow went in, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches maybe. And it was just like, oh gosh. So what proceeded after that was like 24 hours of, I'd give him 2 or 3 hours, and I'd track him through the trees, try to get another shot off, hoping that he was just so mortally wounded he wasn't going to get up. But he'd get up and he'd run. And he'd run a half mile or quarter mile. There was snow on the ground at the time, so but it was quite a cluster, and it was a pretty terrible experience to have as your first archery one.
Sure.
And I think every hunter goes through this. So when that happens, you question yourself. You're like, is this something, do I want to continue down this process? And I hit the bottom of the lowest of lows doing that, and then after that I was like, I need to figure this out. And so now I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole of archery and hunting and figuring it all out.
Did you ever recover that bull then, or?
I did, yeah. The next morning,
Awesome.
found him, but
Do you think
pretty wild.
the snow was crucial to really keeping on his tracks?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, obviously, would have shot a better, a much smaller broadhead. And now I'm basically shooting the 4-blade little slick tricks, and there's a bunch of great broadheads out there, but those things are great, and like a 1 1/4 inch cutting diameter, I think. But that's what I shot my bull with this year. But yeah, obviously I would shoot a different broadhead. And secondly, after I bumped him the first time, so I think I waited 3 hours after I bumped him the first time to go in. I probably would have waited 8 hours. I would have waited longer just to really verify that's okay. He's mortally hit, maybe, I think. And even now, it's you get 10 seconds of watching the thing run off to kind of make an educated guess on what that thing's status is. So, but yes, in hindsight, I probably would have waited 8 hours before moving in, and I bet that bull, he either would have been dead or he would have been
So stiff.
Could have got another arrow. And every time I tried really, really hard to get another arrow in that thing. But yeah, he'd get up and he'd run. And his poor thing, his tongue's hanging out, and you just feel like such an asshole for doing this.
Those are the worst.
Yeah, it's like, why do I hunt? And
yeah.
So now, when you make a quick kill and everything works out right, it's a really great feeling. And so, because I haven't bought an elk steak, or I haven't bought a beef steak in, I don't know, 15 years. I bet. My freezers are full of elk and wild game.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But
hey, since we're on the topic of elk hunting, we hopped on our Instagram page and we threw up a story, and we asked all the people that follow us if you had any questions for Stephen Drake, and you've actually answered quite a few of them just as you were storytelling. But someone did ask, what is the best way to start elk hunting if you've never done it before? Like, how did you get into it, and what is a tip that you think would be helpful for someone who's never hunted elk? Gotcha.
Yeah, having a mentor is an amazing thing for sure. When I started, and it sounds like maybe a lot of you guys, we had fathers or figures in our lives, like direct relation that took us hunting, and so that was how I got into it. But in today's day and age, there's so much information online. I mean, your guys' YouTube channel, obviously. I mean, there's an infinite amount of information online. Sometimes almost too much, but that would be the first place that I would go. I would jump on YouTube and just be like, how to elk hunt, and you're going to go down this rabbit hole of tips and tactics and just the general gamut of things. But that's where I would start.
I think those are great. A couple other ideas that popped up too is just if you can go on an elk hunt with somebody, and not even with a tag in hand, but just to absorb as much as you can get in, whether it's an archery hunt, if that's what you're kind of angling to try to begin, or a rifle hunt. I think just being on an actual elk hunt and taking kind of mental notes and what happened in these different scenarios, and from everything from gear to setup to you name it, can be valuable information gleaned just by following somebody around in the elk woods. If you can find somebody that'd be willing to let you kind of be on their side, if you will, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking back to just myself, and I actually would go out and pursue elk to call them for fun long before I ever got a chance to hunt them, because here in Utah, typically our draw system, it would take so long, so many years to actually hunt elk. So a lot of things I did before I ever actually hunted myself was join people, whether it's family or friends lucky enough to draw out. But I would say get out in the elk woods, obviously, if it's possible. If you don't live where elk are, you can't do that. But if you can go out and just experience the elk rut, put some camo on, make sure you're within the, watch your season dates if you have to be in Hunter Orange or whatever. But go out, call, go look for sign, check wallows, and almost kind of like just go try it, stalk them and call them and kind of mess around with them. That's what I did long before I ever got to hunt elk. And I enjoyed it, man. Just going out to call elk or hearing them bugle and hearing them rut, that's just a lot of fun. Whether you got a weapon in hand or not, it's still a blast.
Absolutely, yeah.
Logie Bear, a lot of questions around camera stuff. Do you have any specific things Mr. Drake can maybe address? I know you and Maddie have been absolutely massive fans of Steven's for many years a creative side, and we'll get into some of the questions that others have had, but get into some more technical camera type stuff.
Oh boy.
It's probably a common question you get all the time, and I always have a different answer when people ask me, like, what's the best camera? And I always say the camera that you already have. But if you had to choose, and very situational, but if you're going on an elk hunt and you get one lens, what are you taking?
Ooh, like with a whatever, some DSLR or mirrorless body?
Yeah, just DSLR body.
So the thought process there is like when you're actively hunting, if you've got a big camera body on you, and especially if you're the hunter, it's really hard to
maneuver
that thing or like draw your bow with the camera on you. So it's like, get the smallest thing you can that's gonna not end up in the bottom of your pack.
That's great.
When the camera's in your pack, you're not using it.
Right.
And so when I'm out there documenting personal stuff, a lot of times it'll be, especially during archery season, the issue with archery is like when you draw your bow, you've got the string coming across your chest, and kind of wherever you might have a camera, it's going to get in the way of your string. And then it makes things pretty dang hard to actively hunt. So a lot of times during archery seasons, I'll just use my iPhone.
Definitely.
You can really capture some amazing footage. Photos aren't that great, but like the footage you can capture, your phone is, you know how to use it. It's in your pocket. It's instantly accessible. I keep mine in my vinyl harness, so it's like minimal hand movement. You're just like bloop, and so that's definitely a tip during rifle season, just because the way the rifle is, like holding the rifle up, it's the camera would be less impeding to your movement. I usually run it's a Zeiss 18 mil f2.8 lens. It's this little tiny kind of wide angle.
Yeah, like little pancake looking lens almost. Type
Yeah,
deal.
it's a little bigger than that one, but yeah, it's like the shortest wide angle lens currently available, at least with Sony cameras. And a number of I've seen a few different like YouTube blog people using that lens.
Do you have any tips? Somebody asked with regards to cell phone photos and such that might be helpful for people to get a better image or better quality in the event that they don't have a camera. So kind of like you just recommended, use your phone. Any points that you point out there?
So when you have a high-end camera, a lot of times you can shoot directly into the sun. So like you can like backlight a subject. You can get like really cool silhouette shots and whatever, or get some cool light flares. You really can't do that with an iPhone or with really any phone that I've ever used. And so always putting the sun directly behind you as you're shooting your subject, that's going to probably lead to getting the best image quality on the photo side of things.
Okay. So today we were dealing with a lot of overcast, gray, kind of gloomy stuff. Question is, what camera settings and or lens do you prefer in those type of conditions?
I don't know. It's kind of less about the lens. It's more about figuring out ways to fill the frame with interesting subject matter that's going to pop. And so one kind of photo tactic I use in either good or bad light, it doesn't matter, is always have a foreground, a midground, and a background. So like say you're taking a photo of your friend, maybe say he's 50 yards out, and you're just taking a photo of him walking through some sagebrush. Instead of like standing up and shooting the photo of him, like get right down low and actually shoot through some of the sagebrush. And the sagebrush gives you a foreground. The midground is the person is the subject, and then maybe you've got a background, which is like a cool mountain scene. So always, get low, get different angles. If you shoot in your perspective, like standing up, it's probably going to be kind of boring. So find ways to fill the frame with more than just whoever your subject is.
I think that's a great point too for beginning photographers, and if you're getting into this, just to master framing. Yep. You might not have the best equipment, but you can have the best equipment, not be good at framing a shot or not be good at setting a shot, and it's not nearly as captivating as if you had low budget equipment and you nailed all of those things.
Totally, yeah.
Which I think is a good point.
How about for those wanting to get into maybe wildlife type photography, what would be a recommended setup for like a beginner intermediate type person?
The biggest thing with wildlife photography, so if you were to get a 70-200 lens, that's kind of in my opinion, kind of the holy grail lens. I mean, you can get some really epic shots with that. 200 millimeters is not, like, you got to be 50 yards from an elk to really fill the frame with that thing. So for a lot of wildlife stuff, in my opinion, you need at least a 400 millimeter zoom lens. So pair that with, I don't know, there's so many cameras out there these days. A couple ones that I really like, the Sony a6000. There's a whole series, Sony a6000 series. Those are all great cameras, and if you paired it with a 400 mil lens, you would get some great results. Canon also makes, it's called the Canon 6D Mark II. It's a full frame. It's got a flip screen. It's an older camera, but the quality out of that thing is pretty insane. I think you can probably buy one of those on eBay right now for less than $1,000.
Nice. So as another question here, as a kid that can't really drive around or do much yet, any suggestions on how to gain creative experience?
Just tag along with as many people and hunts and adventures as you can, and shoot a lot. Like, always have your camera in your hand. And one thing, so when I started photography, I'd always just wear my, just the regular camera strap, and I'd often have 2 camera bodies hanging from my neck. And if you're out in the mountains hiking and stuff, it's literally a pain in the neck, and the cameras are bouncing around. It's just chaotic, and you about get hung by your straps. And so there's a number of different kind of camera carry pieces, and the one I use is called Cotton Carrier. It's this little base plate you mount on the bottom of your camera. It connects either to a chest mount on your body, or they have a shoulder mount system as well. But it just gives you instant access to your camera with a simple twist. Doesn't make any noise. Great for hunting. So that's a great thing for when you actually are out in the field.
I've got a tip for someone who can't travel, because like you said, he didn't have a car, and I'm no expert. But when I was in high school, I took a photography class, and through that class, that's where I learned like different things. Like, we'd have assignments like texture, like photograph things with texture. Then we'd have landscape. Then we have industrial, or, what's the word I'm looking for? Like structures. And so architecture. Yeah. We had every week was a different assignment, and that allowed you to kind of learn about like the creative, like how can you take a cool picture of old rusty wood with old nails coming out of it, and totally. With framing and things like that, and you can get really creative. So even if you can't go anywhere, and it might not be like, oh, well, I just want to do like wildlife and wild animals, but if you can actually get at least some knowledge about all those different things, I think you'll just learn a lot about what you like, and then also how to get better at what you want to get better at, is if you're just kind of well-rounded. So
totally,
we took pictures of the most random stuff, but they turned out so awesome. You know what I mean? Things I would have before photography class never thought was cool or interesting. So yeah, take pictures of a lot of different things.
And to add on that, I mean, it's a thing called street photography. People just walk around the streets and get all sorts of, I mean, if you live in a big city, there's so much to photograph, from structures to, there's so many interesting people, like just go like meet people and be like, hey, like, do you mind if I take a photo of you? I'm just trying to up my photo skills, and like if you live in a big city, walk around the streets, shoot photos of houses, shoot photos of people, like interact with people, like get them to make a funny face, like tell a politically correct joke. And that's actually a great, there's so many photo tips, but I've definitely used that on this project that we're down here in Utah on. Is one thing when you're shooting photographs of people, often, and these guys have all been great. They obviously spend a lot of time around the camera and just are pretty natural, but a lot of times when you're shooting photos of people and you're getting like maybe portraits or just getting the facial reactions, as soon as you point the camera at them, they're going to look really weird. they're just going to act really, really awkward, and it's going to come out in their facial expression. Or if they're like, okay, smile, and they just give you this weirdest smile, and you're like, oh gosh, this is just going to look terrible. So it's like, basically the goal is try to get them to laugh. Say something funny. I've got not a bunch. I have 2 very politically incorrect jokes that I usually have to gauge the audience before I pull them out. But but usually, if you have some jokes in your back pocket, and
just getting that natural,
kind of candid, not staged.
Exactly.
Look, that's what you're going for.
So you shoot photos of them. You have your camera ready, and you don't really take any until you say the joke, and then once they start laughing, that's when you start taking the photo.
Brian pointed that out with the silent shutter. That's very clever too, because you don't know when you're taking the photos.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
You kind of alluded, you have a ton of photography tips. I know you also offer, you have a side kind of business as well. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So my friend Zach Boughton and I, he's worked as a freelance photographer, videographer for many years, and as have I. And I think between the two of us, we've got like 25 years of experience. And man, him and I were just getting so many questions, and there's just so many people interested in photography and hunting. And it's like, how the heck did you turn this into a full-time job? And which is really cool. And it's him and I both were like, hey, let's put our heads together, because like we want to help people. We want to get more people, provide the intel to people to get them to do this. And so him and I made an online masterclass and mentorship program, and think there's 45 video lessons, and took us probably 2 months to create this thing in my living room there in Bozeman. And yeah, we talk about everything from, so kind of the meat and potatoes of the course is like, okay, you've already got photo skills, you already know how to use a camera, you know you want to work in the hunting space. It doesn't really have to be the hunting space. A lot of the skills we teach really apply to anywhere, any space in life, but it's like, okay, how do I take these camera skills and turn them into a business? Like how do I land clients? How do I pitch brands? And so we go through all the nitty gritty of all that. So,
And if people are interested in kind of looking into that, how'd they find that?
right. So didn't mention the name there. It's called the Hunting Photographer. So on Instagram, we've got our handle is the Hunting Photog.
Okay.
The Hunting Photographer was taken. So what do you do? So we shortened it to the Hunting Photog. But if you go online, just type in thehuntingphotographer.com. You can find a bunch of information there. So we've got a bunch of free content as well, in addition to the Masterclass and Mentorship Program. The Masterclass and Mentorship Program is a paid deal. But the free content, Zach and I have gotten together. I think we've done like 40 podcasts together. And we've had a bunch of industry folks come in, different photographers, and we talk to them. So there's, basically 40 hours of really amazing content that, I think you'd be silly not to listen to if you're into podcasts and have long drives.
So of all the tips, tricks, and trades, top 3 tips for somebody that wants to take better hunting-related film and/or photography.
Well, if you want to make it like your living, I think probably the number one answer is work on your people skills and network. I know so many photographers that, I don't know that many, but there's a number of them that they aren't like technically the best photographer in the world. They might not take the coolest photo, but they have amazing people skills, and they're great at building relationships, and they'll call up whoever at the brands often, and they just become people's friends. And because of that, they land jobs, and they're making 6 figures a year because they're just such great people.
Sure.
A people person. Versus a lot of photographers, they spend so much time on the technical aspect of it. They get really good at it, but they're not landing any jobs. Eventually they're like, I can't make a living doing this, so they go do something else. And it's like, it sucks to see that because they have so much potential.
Right.
So yeah, I think, number one, it's work, network. And whether you're in school or not, just like try to connect with people that are in the industry that maybe you want to work with. If you want to work in the hunting space, I know this last year's been tough, but I would say go to as many network events as you can. Go to Hush film premieres, go to the Total Archery Challenge shoots, go to trade shows, do all those things, and you're just going to naturally meet people at those events, and you never know where that's going to go. Once you're established, it's kind of amazing. Like for me, every time I'd go to a trade show, so many opportunities would just, you'd be talking to somebody and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing on like this date to this date? And they're like, hey, you want to go to Canada and do a film project? And you're like, yep. And that happens at every single trade show that I've ever been to.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely worth your time on the networking side of things. But other tips, kind of expanding on what Eric and I were addressing earlier, if you want to get into hunting photography, what am I getting at? Just learn how to use your camera.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of the biggest things ever. Like, there's so many people like, gosh, they get out in the hunting woods, like, okay, now I'm going to learn how to use my camera. It's like, no. You want to be pretty dialed before you ever actually enter the woods or before you actually photographing the thing that you really want to learn. So spend the time to figure out how to use your camera, and that shouldn't be that hard. These cameras are not that complicated. There's just a handful of settings that you need to learn, and it's pretty easy.
How much has social media played a role with you kind of turning this into a business and getting gigs from businesses? Like how much because obviously the network and that face-to-face time is so valuable, but how much has like your Instagram page or YouTube channel helped get jobs and sign some deals or whatever?
It's been pretty significant. Yeah, it's if you have the time to do it, if there's other priorities in life, I totally get it. But if you have the time to do it, I think it's absolutely worth building an Instagram profile, growing that as best you can, having a YouTube channel, if again, if you have the time, because the old school train of thought was that, you know, you'd reach out to a company or something and like you would send them like a portfolio. And nowadays, like the concept of portfolio, it's literally somebody's like, oh, who's this guy? They like jump on the first thing that somebody at his brand does. They look you up on Instagram. And they're like, oh, and they scroll through Instagram and then they scroll to the top and they're like, oh, well, does he have a website? And they click on your website. Like I wouldn't invest too much in your website, but having a website makes you look very professional.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think those are having a website and having a social media account, and obviously not posting ridiculous photos of yourself doing stupid things, but just showcasing your work on the digital platforms, I think is huge. And for me in the vlog and YouTube world, when I started doing it, so previous to starting the vlog, I had a lot of brands and just people ask like, hey, like, can you do video? Because almost everyone I shoot for these days, they want photo, video, they want Instagram, they want everything. Yeah. They don't just want photography. If you only do photography, you better be like top 3 in the world, because for the most part, you're not going to get hired unless you can do everything. And so I started this YouTube deal, for a lot of reasons, but another reason was to kind of showcase my video capabilities. And I did I think I did like 6 videos, and like that fall I got hired to do like 2 pretty big video projects as a result, like very like good paying gigs. I was like, holy cow. So yeah, I think if you have the time, it's silly not to.
So in a way, social media is almost the new portfolio.
Absolutely.
The new quick portfolio.
Yeah.
Like you said, well, let's see what he's got. Let's see some of his photos on Instagram. Let's go to his YouTube and kind of see some of the stuff he's come up with. And I think that plays a huge role into anybody with a talent or skill, is, you know, having their stuff on social media is just kind of the new way to find people and network.
I mean, we hear it a lot too. You have people talking about they want to start a hunting YouTube channel or a brand or something along those lines, but they haven't really done it yet. I think it's so important to go build something first, and then go out and ask for something. Yeah, I think a lot of times there's a converse of that, where people are asking for things, whether that be to get hired to do a shoot or maybe to, you know, try to get like a partnership or sponsorship deal, but they haven't really done any of the work yet. There's no library of content. There's no, you know, page full of their previous work experience to show why it would be a valuable addition to a company or a brand that is, you know, looking for that.
Totally. Yeah. Build your portfolio. If you don't land any gigs, go on a bunch of passion projects. Go on your friends' hunts. Do whatever, and then build your portfolio. And then when you actually, in the hunting space, you know, as far as pitching projects, like you got to pitch like the day when like December 1, like that's when pitch season starts, and it goes through like April. After that, if you haven't like pitched things or started landing gigs, like I wouldn't even be pitching projects. I would be looking to the next year. So basically what you should do is you just spend that entire summer and fall just like building up your photo library, proving your platform, proving like, hey, here's what I can do, and then hit people again in the winter.
So I was going to actually ask that earlier. What exactly, for the listeners that may not understand, and I'm one of them, I don't know exactly what you mean, but when you say I'm going to pitch a company for a photo, you know, idea or video idea, what exactly do you mean, like by a pitch?
So say you're a photographer and you're like, I really want to work for XYZ brand. And one great way to potentially do that is to be like, hey, XYZ brand, I'm going on this trip with so-and-so. I believe, you know, it's going to be doing this and this, and maybe you've already done the research into the brand and you're kind of like, you know, their style. Maybe you have some inside intel and you know what products are going to be coming out like the next year, and you're like, hey, we've got this trip lined up. It fits perfectly into what you guys have planned for releasing next year. You know, I would love to go photograph and film this and create some cool assets for you for part of your your release or your launch of those products. And so you would just pitch them that idea. Yeah. And I guess that's kind of the straightforward of it.
I think that kind of separates a lot of people on social media. You know, kind of in our realm of the things where we have partnerships and sponsors. the people who seem to be out kind of like, grinding or whatever and making those relationships and pitching these companies' ideas seem to land more partnerships and, maybe in your side of things, more gigs.
Yep.
And that's a big part of like what we do that people don't really understand. Like you kind of got to reach out and come up with ideas, be creative. And I think that could lead to a lot more opportunities.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Most of the
Because a lot of people believe that like people are just flooding in all the time. Like,
Totally.
oh, we just want to work with you. We're going to hire you, and sometimes that's the case. They may approach you and want to work out a deal, but it is very valuable to, maybe give an offer or a pitch to companies. And
yeah, 90% of the time on the projects I've done, other than this one, this was a rare deal, but most of the time I'm pitching ideas to brands and they're like, yep, let's do it. So, and then part of that is like, you got to develop a really good relationship with the brands to understand and have an idea of what they're coming out with in future years.
That's awesome.
So we've learned some tips, some tricks on a variety of topics. We kind of learned a little bit more about your beginning, your adventures that you've been on, pretty wild. We had some more questions on shed hunting. I know we're kind of running short on time, but there was a couple, one of which was, do you typically focus in on an individual area while shed hunting, which I know you're very passionate about, similar to Eric, or do you like to explore new terrain more blindly looking? What's your strategy on picking up the browns?
So you're always trying to find like the honey hole, and it seems in today's day and era, it's very competitive, and you can't. In my experience, it's really hard to get away from people, and so I do love to explore, and it's part of it. I think it's a natural human tendency. You want to explore and have new experiences and new places, and just try to figure it all out. But with shed hunting, so I've probably been doing it 15 or probably actually 20 years now. Once you start to find, I've picked a few bull sheds, like from the same bull, like 5 years in a row, almost in the exact same spot. Like these elk are very habitual. And so once you kind of find those zones, obviously make a mental cue of that, and you can probably go to the same zone or maybe the same square mile every single year, and those elk are going to always winter there. They're going to probably dump their sheds there. The exploration, again, like I say, comes from just wanting to find the next big honey hole, or so I shed hunt multiple different states, and you take some of these tactics that you learn maybe in your home state, and you're like, okay, let's go to a different state and just try to figure it out there. And often, you'll do a 20-mile day and you won't find squat, but you always learn something. Every time you go out in the woods, you always learn something. And after a couple years of doing it, all that accumulated knowledge will definitely turn into finding a few sheds, and then, hopefully just keep her going. So,
yeah. So sifting through these questions on Instagram, there's one that I'd like to ask you, and we'll kind of probably wrap it up after that. But why do you love shed hunting so much?
I make so much money off of it.
Yeah, just cash.
Gosh, so much cash.
Cash.
No.
Return on ROI.
Return on investment. No, it's funny. A lot of people think you do make a lot of money on shed hunting, and it's okay. So every year I basically do 30 days in the field shed hunting, and I barely make enough money to cover my gas. Sometimes I make enough money to cover my gas and a bit more, but it's like, you might make $100 a day shed hunting, maybe, if you're really in the zone. But it's like, if you're looking at it from a money-making proposition, there's so many things that would be a much better use of your time than than shed hunting if your goal is to make money. But no, for me, it's not about making money. It's about just spending as much time in the outdoors as I can, because often during winter is kind of my busiest time of year, when I'm on the phone a lot, talking with clients, on the computer editing for 50 hours a week type deal. It's just, winter is chaos, and as soon as spring comes around, I usually don't have many photography or video projects booked in that time period. So shed hunting is a way for me to kind of escape and just have my own peace and quiet in the mountains. And my best ideas come when I'm out hiking and just sweating. I think a lot of people they love to work out, and their mind just really gets going from that. I've been in a gym probably 5 times in my life. My gym is just being outside and just like living the kind of the outdoor lifestyle. And so that's why I shed hunt. It's purely just as a way to get out there and spend as much time outdoors as I can. And I also love just building relationships, if you may, with animals, learning about where these animals live, just getting a much more in-depth look into their life, I suppose. And it's pretty cool when you can find sheds off animals that you've either seen before, or maybe you've never seen them before. From a hunting standpoint, shed hunting has led me to harvesting, my biggest whitetail, mule deer, and elk. Wow. Just because I basically found sheds in areas where I was like, oh, I had no idea either A, this animal lived here, or B, like this quality of animal or anything even lived here. And so, yeah, it's an amazing time of year to go out and just learn. And like, yeah, I learned, like I use, like from a hunting perspective, I learn more during shed season than I probably do in the fall or anything, just because a lot of times the animals are very visible. They're on their winter range. You can probably glass them up, and you just get a really good idea of what's out there.
Yeah, that's cool. So are some of those animals that you're finding sheds off then and later leading into hunting them, are they traveling very far or migrating very far?
Yeah, it's every place is different. Some might go, I mean, I don't know, I've seen bulls migrate 100 miles. A bull I killed a couple years ago, I never actually found his sheds. I knew where he was wintering because I saw him in the winter, but then in the summer he would push, 12 miles up into the mountain. And I could never figure out where he was at during the rut. And then, long story short, I got trail camera footage of this bull. A really cool bull. He's a 6x8, and he comes into this wallow, and he's like hissing, just like, and just like real pissed off. And it's early August, and then all of a sudden that bull just disappears. And a month goes by, and I ended up killing that bull in September, 8 miles away. And I didn't even know it was that bull until like 2 months later. I was looking through old trail camera footage, and I was like, no way, that's the same bull. So it was really interesting to learn what his movement pattern was. And then where he would actually spend the winter was another probably 4 miles away. So kind of I think for a lot of elk, that was probably a small migration. I think a lot of them migrate a heck of a lot further. But there's been some other ones that migrate 100 plus miles, and I don't even know where those things they live. I know where they winter.
Yep.
But so you're always trying to figure it out. So it's a very steep learning curve, shed hunting, and just trying to learn about these animals that kind of rule our lives. So
awesome, man. Super appreciative for you to join us today. Love hearing your stories, your experience. Just coming as big fans of yours for so many years. It's been really pleasurable to spend a few days with you and watch you master your craft. And again, can't thank you enough. And just if you guys are looking to learn a little bit more about Mr. Stephen Drake, they can find you in what places?
My Instagram is Stephen Drake Photo. That's Stephen with a V. My YouTube channel is just Stephen Drake. If you just type in Stephen Drake hunting or Stephen Drake photography, you'll find me on YouTube. Then if you want to take a deep dive on photography and hunting photography and trying to make a business out of it, just go to thehuntingphotographer.com or thehuntingphotog on Instagram.
Excellent. Excellent.
Well, it's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys.
Glad we got to meet you and been a fan for a long time, and it was cool to watch you work, dude.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing some of the pictures and photographs he took on this little project we got going on. I haven't seen any of them.
Neither have I.
You guys don't even know I've been taking any photos because my shutter is silent.
No, that really is a trick. I'm like, is he taking video of me? I'm like, am I supposed to smile? Should I turn?
Yeah.
And he has no shutter on the camera.
Could be like
so
your
you never know when he's taking
dude. Silent shutter.
Silent shutter, StephenDrakePhoto.com.
The last photo tip is the best thing I've learned about with silent shutter. When you get it, you're like, oh, it's going to be a great wildlife thing because the animals aren't going to hear me. It's like, well, how often are you actually so close to an animal that it's going to hear you take a photo? And but from when you're actually shooting pictures of people, when they don't know, like when there's an audible click, a lot of times they will instantly start to act weird, or they'll be like, oh, the photo's like, you're done, so I can like turn around. But when they don't know that when they don't know you're taking a photo, they just keep acting. They act supernatural. Not supernatural, they act very natural. And and you just get way better results out of it. So that's been a huge benefit of the silent shutter for me.
I like it.
I like it. Ending on a hot tip, man. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching or listening to another episode of the Hushlife podcast. We will continue to upload on a regular cadence. We'll catch you next time. Thanks again, Steven. Appreciate it.
Do we got a jingle, an exit jingle?
Thanks for watching.
See you guys.
See you guys. See you on the next one.